let's go on to our next speaker, who is Don Mathews. And he will be giving his second speech in his Peter Pan project. This week's project is to organize a speech, where he will demonstrate a beginning, a middle, and an end. Today he will be telling the story of Peter and Wendy from the original book by James Matthew Barrie, and try to keep the language in the vernacular of the 1900s, as suggested in his last evaluation. Don decided to tell the story from the original version of the book, emphasizing the differences between the more recent and familiar versions of the story. Please help me welcome Don Mathews with the story of Peter and Wendy in 5 to 7. No, wait, Don, you're not going to get this done in 5 to 7. Maybe it's Peter and Wendy in 8 to 10 minutes. Let's welcome Don.
Peter? I will say, for the record, that I have to use notes because there's no way I can get this done in 5 to 7. If I were not to use notes, I would pontificate and it would go probably 10 to 20. Fellow Toastmasters, have you ever believed in something so hard that it actually came true? Think of it as adults. Imagine having $1,000 in cash in your hand, that it is so real that you could actually spend it and trade it for goods. As adults, we just can't do that because the reality isn't with us like it is with children. I would like to tell you a story about the Darlington family that lived in England in the Kensington Gardens about the time of the 1900s. Mr. and Mrs. Darling had 3 children. Wendy was the oldest, John, and Michael. The 3 children loved to play in the nursery, and they lived in a world of make-believe, which they called Neverland. Their beds would be pirate ships. One day, the next day, they'd fight Indians. And other days, they were just on any adventure on any island. But that is what they called Neverland. And the leader of Neverland, as they made it out to be, was Peter Pan. And Peter Pan was so real to these children that they even convinced the parents that Peter Pan was real. And one day, Mrs. Darling actually saw Peter Pan. He was trying to get in through the nursery window, which was on the 3rd floor. She quickly pushed him out the window and shut the window behind him, tearing him from his shadow. That is how we've known where the shadow came from the plays and the books. Mrs. Darling took the shadow, rolled it up, and put it into a drawer because she knew Peter would come back for it. And then when he did, she would catch him. The very next night, Peter did come back for his shadow. And this is where he met Wendy for real. Wendy helped him find that shadow, sewed it on his foot, and all she wanted in return was a kiss. But Peter didn't know what a kiss was, and she was too embarrassed to explain it. So she pulled out a thimble and said, this is a kiss. I will give you one. And Peter put the thimble on his finger, put it away, and he figured it out. Oh, it's like a gift. He pulled out an acorn button and gave it to her. Here's a kiss for you. And Wendy took that acorn button, took some thread, put it around her neck, and wore it as a necklace. Peter then taught Michael and John and Wendy how to fly. And before they went to Neverland, Wendy wanted another kiss. But Peter said, I already gave you one. Here, you want your kiss back? Oh, no, I'm sorry, she said. What I want is a thimble. Let me show you how it's done. You thimble me right here with your mouth, and then I thimble you with your mouth. And Peter liked that. He liked it so much, I'm sure he would have thimbled her all night. But they had to get to Neverland. So they flew off Second Star to the right, straight on till morning. Tinkerbell was quite the jealous fairy. She did not like Wendy at all. So she flew ahead to Neverland, ran to the Lost Boys and said, I have a message from Peter. There is a bird coming. It is the Wendy bird. Peter wants you to shoot it down when it arrives. They said, okay, if it's for Peter, we'll do it. Well, when the 4 children came to Neverland flying across, they were greeted by Captain Hook's pirate ship. He fired a cannon blast into the 4 of them that scattered them about the island. Easily enough, here comes the Wendy bird. And Tinker Bell pointed it out to the boys. And Toodles, one of the older boys, took his bow and arrow and shot the Wendy bird right out of the sky. Hit her, and she plummeted to the ground. What a great day. When Peter caught up with the Lost Boys and everybody, he was pissed off. Whoops, 1900 vernacular, sorry. I believe the book said he was vexed. He was really confused. Why would Toodles do such a thing? After all, Toodles was a gay child. 1900 vernacular again. And I don't see, if he was a gay child in 1900, why anybody have a problem with it then? Why do we have a problem with it now? Well, they went to figure it out. And Wendy laid there with an arrow in her chest. But she was okay because the arrow did not strike her heart. It struck the acorn button. And she was okay. But Peter found out that Tinker Bell was behind this whole thing, and he banished Tinker Bell from Neverland forever. Well, at least for a week, because if you're going to hold that kind of a grudge, you've got to be an adult. But the days in Neverland were filled with constant adventure. They lived for months on the island. And Wendy had a great time being a make-believe mother. She took care of all the children, all the Lost Boys, took care of Peter, and the boys got to be boys. They had an adventure every day. They were off with the Indians, off fighting the pirates, doing all the things that they liked to do as children. On one particular day, they were swimming with the mermaids in the lagoon, and they stopped on Marooner's Rock to take a rest. Marooner's Rock is where the pirates would take their prisoners. And what they would do is tie them up and tie them down to the Marooner's Rock. And when the tide came in, they would drown. Easy job for the pirates because the water would also wash the body away. Never any evidence. Well, as they were resting on the rock one day, this fog rolled in. And it scared them. But they found out that the fog was covering the pirate ship. And from the pirate ship was 2 pirates carrying a new prisoner. They were bringing a new prisoner to Marooner's Rock. The pirates got out and they brought the prisoner on the rock. The children dove into the water on the other side. But they noticed that the prisoner was none other than Tiger Lily, the Pickaninny princess. Peter was cunning. He spoke in Captain Hook's voice and said, "Let there go." And the 2 pirates let Tiger Lily go. She slipped into the water and swam away. Wendy and the other children also swam away. But Peter stayed around because he was cocky and mischievous. So, he stuck around and got into a major fight with Captain Hook. They slashed and gutted, and they tore each other up very bad. Neither one of them died, but they were both injured. They both went their separate ways to plan revenge upon the other. The Indians were grateful for Peter for saving Tiger Lily's life and were indebted to him forever. Wendy, after a long while, was getting sick of being a make-believe mother to the children and wanted to be a real mother. John Michael wanted to go home as well. In fact, all the children wanted a real mother and were invited to go along. The Indians agreed to take the children as far as they could in Neverland before they could fly home the rest of the way. Upon their journey, the pirates ambushed them, killed the Indians, and took all the children aboard the pirate ship. Captain Hook was not pleased because he had all the children. He did not have what he really wanted, and that was Peter Pan. Now, in the book and the play, they always say that the pirates never knew where the secret hideout was of the Lost Boys. But they did in the book. They didn't know how to get into the secret hideout was the big issue. So Captain Hook decided he was going to go in the middle of the night to the hideout and find Peter Pan. He figured out a way to get into the hideout, and he walked across the room and saw Peter in his bed. He pulled out his dagger and was going to slash his throat. But he had a better idea. See, Captain Hook always carried poison with him. So he took out the poison and he put 5 drops of poison into his medicine bottle, his medicine cup. And he went back and he figured Peter Pan will kill himself. How glad am I of that? Later that night, Tinkerbell broke free from the ship, came all the way back to the hideout, woke Peter Pan up to tell him what had happened. There was an ambush and blah, blah, blah. And when Peter Pan woke up, the first thing he did was grab the medicine cup that Wendy left. As he was getting ready to take a drink, Tinkerbell grabbed it from his hand and chugged the whole bottle of poison down. And then she died. Well, not quite. Because her last words to Peter Pan was, if I could live, if only the children in the world believed in fairies. So Peter prayed to all the children of the world, and they enjoyed. They said, yes, we believe in fairies, and therefore Tinkerbell lived, no problem. But back on the ship, Peter Pan was trying to turn the Lost Boys into pirates themselves. And he had sold a good story, and the kids were all for it. We are going to be pirates. Yes, it's what the good life it will be. But then John had asked, do I have to give up loyalty to the King of England? And Captain Hook said, why, yes, you do. You must say, down with the King of England. But the boys refused to do so. So there they had to walk the plank. It was now time to die. Wendy, tied to the mast, said to the boys, die brave like Englishmen. And the boys, with that charm, started to walk the plank, almost with pride, but with fear. At that final moment, as John was going to take a step into the water, silence fell about the ship. And all they could hear was tick, 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 tick. If you remember, there was a crocodile that ate Captain Hook's hand. And after he ate the hand, he was fed an alarm clock. That way, they would always know where the crocodile was. And when they heard the ticking, they knew the crocodile was near and was looking for Captain Hook, because the crocodile wanted the rest of his meal. The pirates went into hiding, and that crocodile was not the crocodile, but it was Peter Pan, just sitting at the bow of the ship. Tick, tick, tick. And when all the pirates scattered, he got up and he freed all the boys out of their bonds and Wendy. And then the fight was on. They went to kill as many pirates as they could. And finally, it was down to the last 2, Peter and Captain Hook. In a knockout, drag-out battle to the death. And finally, Peter Pan had Captain Hook in a disadvantaged position. And just as he was about to thrust his dagger into Captain Hook, he heard tick, tick, tick. It wasn't him this time. It was the crocodile. So instead of plunging the dagger into Captain Hook, he kicked him off the ship and into the crocodile. Peter, Wendy, and the boys took the ship to the mainland and flew back to the Darlings from there. The Darlings were glad to see their children return, and they adopted the Lost Boys as well. Peter, of course, went back to Neverland and never did grow up. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, especially Don. Second in the series about Peter Pan. This was a great background story about Peter Pan, give the whole story, condensed version. Couple of minor changes from what we've seen in the Disney version or the Mary Martin version. So a couple of differences there, which you pointed out. But you did a pretty good job of condensing it down. There's a lot of material there, and to be able to condense it into a much shorter time frame takes some doing, but you did a good job doing that. You did go through the whole story, the whole thing, start to finish, hit all the highlights. So that was great. Your opening, I thought, do you want something so badly, you can almost see it, it becomes real to you? I thought that went on a little too long. I would have shortened that a little bit, and the whole thing maybe gets more emotion in it. I know you were trying to hurry through this, trying to get everything in. I would have taken a little more time and had more pauses. Take us on the emotional roller coaster ride. There were a couple of places in there where you confused the names. Darlington, I know that was your former pastor. Darling. And Peter tried to turn the Lost Boys into pirates. That was Captain Hook, I think, not Peter. The croc you didn't mention until right at the end when you're hearing the ticking, so you could have set that up a little bit. A couple of minor things that you could have cut out that would not have affected the story. They did the kiss and then the thimble on the cheek. That didn't relate to anything, so you could have cut the thimble part out. Peter Pan or Tinkerbell did not come into that part, but apparently she was there, so she was jealous. Couple of minor things like that, but you had good body language during the whole thing. So I know you had your notes and you were following the notes carefully. You needed to in order to get the timing down. But you had some good body language in there to tell the story and keep everything set. The rock, you showed the rock and tying somebody onto the rock, and a lot of good stuff in there. So nice condensed version of Peter Pan, and anxious to hear number 3.